Hey everyone, I'll just wait a few more seconds before we start, just to let people join on the call. Okay, I'll get started. Welcome everyone. This is the 14th of December, 2022, and this is our monthly AMA with the delivery team. So we've got a couple of questions on the agenda already, so thanks for adding those. So Leo, would you like to verbalize the call? Verbalize your question if you're on the call. You are, yes.
Yes. No, thank you. And I'm not sure if this is the right call for these type of questions, but so by all means, feel free to let me know. I do have a request for a customer to have a call with them to review some of the features or some of the concerns that they have with using our release features. Versus they're currently using Heat Tool, I think that's the name, or Heat software, and they have a comparison matrix that they generated. But so my question will be, what will be the best process to get that call going?
Great question. So we're probably not the right team for you to answer this stuff if it's around specifically around how does a feature work. It's not actually a feature. So delivery team is deploying and releases changes to GitLab users. We're not necessarily always using all the features of GitLab. However, Chris, are you just listening in, Chris? Because I actually believe we do have the right person on this call. May not be.
I was just listening, but yes, this is I think this is probably for me, Leo, and we can, what we could do is create an issue and discuss it maybe more detail, what you're hoping to get out of the call and what the customer is asking for, and then we can kind of route depending on what specific, and I'm not actually familiar with Heat at the moment, so something I could look into as well. But yeah, let's start an issue and then feel free to tag me on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Great, and thanks for asking, Leo. Jeff, you have the next question.
Yes, so I'll keep the theme of strange questions rolling. So I'm having a surprisingly difficult time narrowing down what are our most critical GitLab repos, what supports base functionality of GitLab as a product versus like what we would consider maybe a feature. I'm thinking here of like, if label functionality were to go down, that's not great. That's for our customer experience, but that's also not necessarily we can stop using the tool. I'm wondering, would you all, from that perspective of understanding how everything kind of filters in and gets deployed, would you be able to help provide some of that context around what are our most critical repositories when it comes to source code?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So we can certainly take a look. My sort of quick answer would be, I don't think, because we are running as monolith, I don't think we actually have sort of a way of saying, oh, if all the code that makes labeling happen just isn't there for whatever reason, things will be fine. As a monolith, there is a kind of assumption that everything will be there. And our deployments package up changes from a number of repos, and then we just treat that as a single unit. It's either working or it's not working. Where some of this might get a little bit more kind of like how working is it comes into, I guess, like how much testing goes into each package. So there are certainly levels of criticality that quality are sort of helping to guide on how many of these features get tested before we deploy. So there certainly are cases where we have things that are considered less important. They may not have all the tests in place for a deployment. It could be we deploy something and it's not looking exactly as it should be, and a fix will get added in. But in terms of actual, like if an element of GitLab. There are some satellite projects which we don't package up, for example, like container registry and CAS and various sort of satellite area things like that. They are related, but also deployed a little bit differently. So it could be that we don't pull changes from those. But for things that are really integral to the deployment package, so more like things like Gitly and Pages, as well as all of the actual like Omnibus and GitLab, if any of those were missing, the deployment wouldn't work for us. Now, it doesn't mean the product wouldn't be usable, but it's a slightly different measure. So I think probably as a monolith, we should probably assume it won't work. But I think maybe the other element to your question is more of perhaps a product sort of one in terms of like which things should be treated as critical. Like from a user experience, like what are the pages or features that I would always expect to have available. Quality actually probably have opinions there as well as the people who sort of plan like test coverage for these things as well.
Okay, that's super helpful. Yeah, I linked an MR there. I know it's a strange question. It's mostly just if we want to take a risk-based approach to if we start locking down some of these repositories and providing more change management just to meet our compliance and our regulatory obligations. I want to be thoughtful about just not providing these broad sweeping changes everywhere. I want to really highlight those most critical areas. So if anybody here has any thoughts, please feel free to weigh in on that, MR.
Great, we'll do that. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Amy.
Does anybody else have a question they would like to verbalize? So I have a question. I know we don't have the key engineer here, but maybe we could get the sort of high level of one of the interesting projects we're working on this quarter inside delivery is around improving the GitLab deployment pipeline sort of observability, which is something which we have our MTTP performance indicator to show this is how long it typically takes a change to reach production. But we don't have really good insights into what contributes to that number. So sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a bit lower. It could be incidents, or it could be test failed, or it could be a few other things. So one of the really interesting projects that is taking place this quarter is to try and actually improve that. But I wonder, like, Michele, maybe would you be able to just give us a little bit of an overview? I guess what I'm interested in most is the, I suppose, like, how this fits in alongside the GitLab product, and I guess like what we might end up with in the future in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, I mean that's a good question. So we are actually what we are trying to build. We are trying to build observability foundation within pipelines. So right now, as you said, our MTTP is like, from when the merge request its production, like is end to end. It's just a number that measures the entire chain. We don't have the visibility because we don't have actually the instrumentation, the tooling right now, or understanding which one of these like pipeline or jobs or stages, how much time is taking, right? So because our MTTP is composed by some active parts where we do actually some jobs, some deployments, but we also have some active waiting, for example, when we have some packaging happening, like from distribution and so on. So we also don't understand if sometimes some of those stages or jobs or parts of the pipeline start to take more time for a problem, or maybe because we extend too much our end-to-end testing or QA and so on. So if we start to be able to trace the entire pipeline and have like single section for how much time each job stage is taking, we can try also to understand better how do we spend the time in our MTTP, which are the parts where we can optimize, start to understand if we have some trends, and if these trends are like increasing constantly and so on. So in which part and how we can improve that part. All this functionality right now, we are building it within delivery team because it's something that we actually need for ourselves, and now we can decrease our MTTP and so on. But this would be probably a great feature that we would like to see within the product, right? So if we have this problem, a lot of our customers are going to have the same problem, especially the ones that are having more complex pipelines to deliver their software, and having this functionality within the product itself. So maybe within our monitor and observability product stack would be probably a great addition. And we will try to get back on that part and have our learnings. And we are already using some of the functionalities that have been offered by the monitor observability group, but definitely we need to start to see how we can monitor and observe one of the main features of our product that are pipelines.
Yes, thanks for sharing. Chris, you have the next question.
I do. Yeah, December holidays and New Year coming up. I'm just curious if the delivery team does anything particular to prepare for that or during that and after that, or any, if our deployments typically change during that period.
Yes, that's a super question. So yes, we absolutely do. Over the holiday period, so this year it's running from the 26th right through to the 2nd. We have just general low availability across infrastructure. So even more significantly than within delivery, we have quite low availability in the reliability teams. So we don't want to create unnecessary risk by making lots of changes over this time. So we do have a hard production change lock coming in over that time, and that will prevent deployment. It will also prevent feature flag changes, and it will prevent any kind of general changes that often are happening on production. So we'll have a sort of full lockdown. Now, one thing we do know is that actually halting deployments for a long period of time adds risk, because it means the first deployment that we do following these things has an awful lot of changes in it. So we are also planning that we will have a couple of deployments that will take place during this production change lock, and they will be kind of carefully coordinated and managed with approvals, so that we can actually try and just reduce our deployment pressure a little bit over those times.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, thanks for asking. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to verbalize?
Yeah, along those lines, because I know in the past, we have a release on the 22nd, and that sort of coincides with everyone being off. And in the past, we've had issues where like self-managed customers have had issues with that release on the 22nd, and it's a ghost town to get something pushed out after that. What are your plans to kind of, plan for that, or yeah, what are we hoping to accomplish there?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's absolutely, it's certainly something we've considered, and there's always a risk of us needing to respond to an incident or a security vulnerability or something like that. So we do have people available who are working over those times. We also have a kind of escalation policy. So if needed, we already have approvals for a couple of planned deployments that will take place just to reduce the pressure. In the event that there are sort of significant problems, we could also do additional work, right? That would allow us to actually, releases are not covered by the production change log, right? So we can still put out patch releases or security releases if we need to. I believe across development, there is also a similar kind of escalation process that will be in place so that people can be sort of gathered and coordinated on these things if needed.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thanks for asking. Does anybody else have a question they would like to ask?
I've got a question on a very different topic, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
I heard through the grapevine that the delivery team might be doing a fast boot sometime next year. And if that's the case, I'm kind of curious as to what you all might work on. And I'm also curious as to how you plan to showcase how productive or whether or not something was successful during the fast boot, I guess.
That is a great question. So I will give a first one, but please jump in, people. So we have put together a proposal for a fast boot that we would like to have. So we have a few motivations for this to do it right now. So one is, over this past year, we have had quite a lot of team changes. So the team has grown and it has split in two. But we've also sort of shifted what we're working on. And we have, up until sort of this last couple of months, we have very much been the team who handles deployments, handles releases, and does all the work required to get these changes out. Now, to line up with the sort of the PaaS sort of view, the product direction that we want to take in, the sort of platforms direction we want to be moving in, we really want to start shifting so that actually we are not the people who are always holding all the tools and taking all the actions, but actually it becomes more of a self-managed, a self-serve process where, you know, developers or other people who want information can pull information themselves without having to ask delivery for everything. So with that in line, we have put together a proposal so that we can come together and start building out some of these foundations. The idea we'd have is to spend a few days together and build, well, try and build out a sort of MVP, so a very, very first iteration that would allow us to deploy experimental changes to GitLab.com. We can't do this right now because changes must be merged and packaged and they go to production and they affect all users. So things do need to be quite ready before they get merged. But we'd love to have a way where actually we don't have to run that full packaging process, and we have a way to safely isolate out a commit or a couple of commits and put them somewhere where they could receive a small amount of traffic and we could see how they behave. So that would be the idea. There's sort of a few interesting elements from delivery point of view. Packaging is a significant one. So at the moment, all changes get packaged together and we deploy them together. So we need to have a way of handling, like creating and managing an experimental package. And we would also need to think about, what does the environment look like? So we currently have our production canary environment and our production environment. This would be something different. And this would be a much more sort of contained and sort of like safe environment. We wouldn't just want like traffic to land on it randomly. We would very much need to manage that. And then observability as well, because the point of having something experimental would be to monitor it and see, like, how does this actually behave? So those are some interesting elements that we would hope to be able to come together and have a go at building up.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for asking, Skarbek. Does anybody else have a question?
What's a fast boot? Sorry, I don't know what that is.
Great question, Chris. Great question. So fast boot is a bit of a GitLab concept, but it's sort of a come together, bring people together, co-located together for a short period of time and try and basically just kick off a project or a concept or something to come together. So delivery did one very, very early days. Delivery team, several of the people in delivery team came together to do the first version of auto deploys. So to put all the pieces together. So we think this one has similar kind of complexity that runs across both the delivery teams and would be well suited to actually figuring out as a group together.
Very cool. Thank you.
I'm curious about like the next steps for Kubernetes. I know that like put a lot of effort into getting Redis into Kubernetes. I think it's there. I guess I have two questions. I think Matt did a great article about how he did profiling on a Redis cluster. Is that still possible on Kubernetes? And then the second question is like, okay, are we moving other things in there as well? Oh.
Great questions. Skarbek, can I defer to you? Like, I think this one, some of this is, well, a lot of this is very much, let me rephrase this. All of that is scalability, doing awesome work to make that happen. But Skarbek, you're probably close enough to this that you may have some opinions.
Yeah, so scalability certainly has done a lot of work around profiling Redis and such, and a lot of the tooling they use should be interchangeable, whether it's trying to investigate problems inside of Kubernetes or inside of virtual machines. If I recall correctly, what they were troubleshooting was inside of virtual machines. That said, the tooling that they're leveraging should still be interchangeable inside of the Kubernetes land. It's just a matter of making sure that tooling works as desired, because there are some interesting challenges with the way that containers run inside of a node versus having the native capability of an operating system readily available to you. As far as my next steps in migrating things into Kubernetes, I think we've decided to kind of put a pause on that at the moment. If I recall correctly, there's been some upcoming changes with the direction that GitLab has chosen to take with their method of managing redundancy within the GitLab service itself, storage redundancy and such. So with that, we have chosen not to migrate that particular workload on over into Kubernetes, and that also impacts Prefect, because it seems like Prefect might be changing quite greatly. The only other item I could think of that pretty much is not inside of Kubernetes is Postgres. I don't see that moving into Kubernetes. That's a massive system. We have a dedicated team for it. These are big servers. If we move that to Kubernetes, that would be something we would want to raise with the team that manages those systems. But I think the only, well, I guess there's one other thing. I think we've only migrated 1 or 2 Redis clusters into Kubernetes. I don't think we've got all of them inside of there, but I think scalability is kind of tackling that and deciding the next steps for Redis in general. I guess another one we could probably think of is our front door, HA proxy. Currently, the decision was made to try to upgrade HA proxy in place, that we get the latest version, that we were not hitting the end of life support on the version that we currently run. And I think because of that work, we are pausing trying to migrate our front door services into Kubernetes as well. So that'll be something that the reliability team will be tackling. That's all I can think of off the top of my head as far as Kubernetes related work.
And I think just to add to that, I would say, like, I dispute a little bit your word pause, Skarbek. So all of the sort of key services around the sort of application are pretty much migrated. So, you know, we did all of the stateless services are migrated. And I think Redis at the moment looks like the last really sort of significant one that would get great benefits from migrating. So scalability, yeah, they have done some great work there. I believe they're continuing to look at how to migrate the rest of the Redises. And then beyond that, we have a lot of little services that are very much down to how GitLab.com is maybe set up and running, but probably a lot less useful for general users. So they may or may not come, but they're sort of not considered part of our GitLab.com migration. And that means we can move on to the next sort of exciting stuff, because the whole point of doing the migration was to set us up for deployments. So they are faster and they are more flexible. So actually this is a great sort of place for delivery to get to. Reliability are now taking on more of the sort of hands-on operating of the Kubernetes clusters and doing more of the kind of maintenance and getting those things to sort of be where we want them to be for the future. And delivery will now be starting to build out, what does that mean for our deployment strategies? Like, how can we make more use of this this flexibility as we have? So there'll be lots of exciting stuff coming for that. Does anybody have a final question for today? No? Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for all the questions, and thanks for joining us. And I hope you all have a great rest of your year. We'll see you next year. Take care. Bye.